You are standing in your driveway on a January morning, scraping at a windshield frozen solid as a dinner plate, your fingers burning through your gloves, the defroster roaring and doing absolutely nothing. I know that feeling in my bones. I lived it for 30 winters. But 3 years ago, I stood in a gravel lane in Holmes County, Ohio, and I watched an old Amish man wipe his buggy glass clean with something he carried in his coat pocket, and that glass did not frost again the entire season. Here is what I am telling you today. Your car does not have to cost you a fortune, rust out early, or leave you stranded in the cold, and almost everything you need to protect it is already sitting in your kitchen and your garden shed right now. The people who taught me this drive black buggies, not automobiles, but they keep the metal, the leather, and the machinery in their world alive for 40 and 50 years using methods the rest of us threw away. And this knowledge is vanishing fast because the men who remember it are in their 80s, and their grandsons are buying the same sprays and gadgets you and I do. Stay with me to the end, because the last trick I am going to hand you comes straight out of an 1888 farm ledger I nearly missed, and it removes rust from metal overnight using one sweet thing from your pantry. Every single method here works on the ordinary car sitting in your driveway right now. You do not need a barn. You do not need a single special tool. You just need to hear this before it slips away for good. Let me take you back to that frozen morning, because it is where everything started to change for me. I had been complaining about my windshield, and this man, his name was Amish, he just smiled and shook his head. He reached into his coat and pulled out a little cloth bundle. Inside was half of a raw onion. He rubbed the cut side across his buggy glass in long, slow strokes, the whole surface, and he told me the frost would not grab hold of treated glass the way it grabs bare glass. I thought he was pulling my leg. I honestly did. But the sugars and oils in a cut onion leave behind a thin film that stops water from bonding into a solid sheet of ice, and a raw potato does the very same thing. You cut it in half, you rub the flat side over your windshield and your side windows the night before, and in the morning the frost is loose and powdery instead of welded to the glass. It sounds too simple to matter. That is exactly why nobody remembers it anymore. But if you want the stronger version, the one I use every winter now, you mix 3 parts plain white vinegar to 1 part water in a spray bottle and mist your windshield before you go to bed. The acidity raises the point at which water freezes on the surface and the glass stays clear down into a hard, cold snap. A jug of vinegar costs about $3 and lasts you the whole winter. Compare that to the $9 or $10 every de-icer can cost, the ones you buy 3 of because you keep losing them, and you start to see the pattern. The old way is not just cleverer, it is nearly free. Now here is the part I want you to hold on to, because the same idea that keeps ice off your glass is the exact idea that keeps your locks from freezing shut. Amish told me his father never once had a frozen buggy latch, and I did not understand why until later. Therefore, let me take you to the thing that costs American drivers more money than anything else on their vehicle, the silent thief that eats a car from underneath while you are looking at the shiny paint on top. Rust. I want to talk to you about rust, because this is where I wasted the most money in my whole life, and this is where the Amish put the rest of us to shame. I used to trade in a truck every 6 or 7 years, and every single time the reason was the same. The body was rotting out from below. The frame, the wheel wells, the rocker panels, all of it turning to brown lace while the engine still ran perfectly fine. I was throwing away good machines because the metal underneath had been left naked to salt and water. Now think about this. The Amish keep plows, wagons, buggy frames, hand tools, and steel implements out in the weather for 2, 3, 4 generations. I have put my hands on a hay rake that was older than my grandfather, and the metal was still sound. How? They never stopped using the old grease. Specifically, they used wool grease, the natural waxy oil that comes off a sheep's fleece. The proper name for it is lanolin, and it is one of the most water-repelling substances in the natural world, because its entire job on a living sheep is to keep rain from ever reaching the skin. Here is the piece that will stop you cold. That expensive professional undercoating that the good rush shops spray onto vehicles, the stuff that costs you $150 or more a treatment, a whole category of it is made from exactly that. Wool wax, lanolin, the same grease those farm families have been rubbing onto steel by hand for over 100 years. The industry took the barnyard remedy, put it in a can, and sold it back to us at a premium. I nearly laughed out loud when I learned that, and then I got a little angry because I had paid for it more than once. You can buy pure lanolin cheaply, and you can warm it slightly so it spreads, and you can wipe it onto the bare metal underneath your car, inside the door bottoms where water pools, along the seams where rust always starts first. It creeps into the tiny gaps. It does not crack in the cold like paint does, and it stays soft and self-healing so a stone chip does not open a wound. The old-timers on the homesteading boards who rediscovered this call it a game changer, and more than one of them wrote the exact words. I wish somebody had told me this 20 cars ago. If you want the poor man's version, and this is the one I learned first, it is boiled linseed oil, pressed from the flax plant, the same oil those families used on every wooden handle and every barn board for 2 centuries. You brush a thin coat onto clean, dry metal, onto your frame, your undercarriage, the inside of your fenders, and it soaks in and hardens into a protective skin that shrugs off water. Penn State agricultural extension work has documented for years that linseed oil has been a frontline wood and metal preservative on American farms since the 1700s. It is not folklore. It is chemistry that predates the paint industry. But here is why this matters more every single year, and why I am in a hurry to tell you. Salt on winter roads is more aggressive now than it was in my father's day. The modern brines they spray stay wet longer and bite deeper. So the exact moment we most need the old grease, we have forgotten it exists, and we are handing our cars over to the rot faster than ever. Therefore, the men who know how to stop it are the ones we should be listening to hardest, and they are the ones running out of time. Let me tell you what happened the day my car would not start, because this next thing saved me a tow and a bill I will never forget. It was a cold, gray morning. I turned the key, and I got nothing but a slow, tired groan and then silence. I lifted the hood the way you do when you have no idea what you are looking at, and I saw it. A crusty white and blue-green fuzz built up thick around both battery terminals like something growing in a cave. That corrosion was choking the connection. My battery was fine. The path for the power was blocked. Now here is what I would have done in my old life. I would have called somebody, paid somebody, or driven straight to the parts store and bought a brand new battery I did not need for $140 or more. But I had been spending time around these families by then, and I remembered watching a woman clean the corroded fittings on her husband's generator with nothing but a paste of baking soda and water and an old toothbrush. So that is what I did. Baking soda is a mild base, and battery corrosion is acidic, so the two cancel each other out the instant they touch. You disconnect the terminals negative first, always negative first. You scrub that paste right onto the crust, and you watch it fizz and dissolve away. You rinse it with a little clean water, you dry it, and here is the finishing touch the old man showed me. You smear a thin film of plain petroleum jelly over the clean terminals before you reconnect them. That jelly keeps air and moisture off the metal so the corrosion cannot come back for a long, long time. My car started on the first turn. The whole repair cost me pennies. A box of baking soda is under $1. A jar of petroleum jelly you probably already own. Between those two, and knowing what that fuzz actually was, I saved myself a battery and a service call. And the thing is, most people never learn this, because the whole system around us is built to make you feel helpless the second something goes wrong under that hood. Somebody profits every time you assume you cannot fix it yourself. That is the quiet villain in all of this, and now that you are past the door with me, I will say it plainly. So much of what we buy for our cars is designed to be replaced, not maintained. The sealed part, instead of the serviceable one. the additive you must keep buying instead of the habit that would end the problem. The Amish never entered that trap because their entire way of life is built on making a thing last as long as it possibly can and repairing it with what is on hand. Every year, fewer people carry that instinct, and every year the cost of not carrying it climbs higher on the rest of us. If you want to go deeper into exactly how these families think about keeping things alive, I put together a book called Plain Wisdom that lays out the full Amish approach to materials, maintenance, and making things last, drawn from years of conversations with the people who still live it. Everything in it is practical, rooted in the same no-waste philosophy you are hearing right now, and it goes well beyond cars into every corner of the home in the land. If that is the kind of knowledge you want to keep close, you will find the details in the description below. Now I need to turn and talk directly to you, because I can already hear what some of you are thinking. You are thinking, that is fine for a man with a workbench and a barn and a lifetime of tinkering, but I live in an apartment or a small house, and I do not know a socket wrench from a spatula. I want you to hear me clearly. This next part is built specifically for you, for the car you have right now, using only things already inside your home, and it takes no skill beyond wiping a cloth in a circle. Start with your headlights, because this one shocked me. If your headlights have gone cloudy and yellow, that foggy film that makes your night driving dim and dangerous, you do not need a restoration kit, and you do not need new housings. That haze is oxidized plastic, and you can cut it back with ordinary toothpaste, the plain white paste kind, not the gel. You put a good dab on a damp cloth, and you rub it over the lens in firm little circles for a couple of minutes, and the mild grit in the toothpaste polishes away the dead cloudy layer. You rinse it, you dry it, and the light comes back clear. Ohio State Extension folks and countless home mechanics have confirmed this simple abrasive trick over and over. It costs you nothing but a few minutes, and it can genuinely make you safer on a dark road. Now go inside your car. If your leather or vinyl seats are drying out, cracking, looking tired and gray, you do not need a $20 bottle of conditioner full of things you cannot pronounce. A tiny amount of olive oil on a soft cloth, buffed gently into the leather and then wiped off so nothing stays greasy, feeds the material and brings back the color and the suppleness. Those families conditioned their leather harnesses and their work boots this exact way for generations, with the fats and oils they already had in the kitchen, because a cracked harness could mean a lost day of work, and they could not afford that. For the glass inside and out, that same vinegar and water mix I told you about cuts through the oily film that builds up on your windshield and leaves it streak-free and crystal clear, far better than the blue spray that just smears the haze around. For stubborn sticky spots, sap, tar, an old sticker, a little cooking oil, or a dab of peanut butter breaks the grip and lifts it off without scratching. And here is the one I love the most for you apartment drivers. If your car smells stale or musty, or like whatever you ate in it last week, you do not buy those chemical trees that give some people a headache. You put a couple of tablespoons of baking soda in an open jar, or an old sock tied off at the top, and you tuck it under a seat, and it quietly swallows the odor out of the air for weeks. In damp weather, you set out a small pouch of baking soda or a little bag of rice, and it pulls the moisture that fogs your windows and rots your carpet. None of that requires a garage. None of it requires a single tool. You could do every bit of it this weekend in a parking lot with a rag and 3 things from your cupboard, and you would spend less than the price of one fancy car product. That is the whole point of what these families kept alive. The knowledge does the work, not the equipment. And once you have it, nobody can ever sell you helplessness again. But I promised you something at the very beginning, and I have been holding it back on purpose because it is the one that made me sit down and actually build this channel. Let me take you to how I found it, because I almost did not. I was in a farmhouse kitchen, and an elderly woman, a widow, was clearing out a chest that had belonged to her husband's family. She handed me a bundle of brittle papers tied with string, and among them was a farm ledger, a working account book, dated 1888. It was full of the ordinary business of a farm, prices of feed, births of calves, weather notes, but folded into the back, in faded pencil, was a recipe, not for food, for cleaning the rust off iron and steel tools, and it called for one ingredient I never in my life would have guessed: molasses. I stared at it. Molasses. The thick, dark, sweet syrup, the leftover from making sugar, the stuff you put in gingerbread. The note said to mix it with water in a barrel and let the rusted iron soak. I thought it had to be a mistake or some superstition, so I did what I always do now. I went and checked it against the real science. And it is true. It is completely chemically true. Molasses contains natural compounds called chelating agents, and what those do is quietly grab onto the iron oxide, the rust, and pull it loose from the good, sound metal underneath without touching the good metal at all. The old sugar chemists and farm boards have known this for a very long time, and it has been quietly kept alive by a handful of blacksmiths and restorers and thrifty old farmers who never let it die. The mainstream world forgot it entirely, because there was no product to sell you. You cannot bottle a barrel of molasses water and mark it up as a miracle. So it vanished from view. Here is exactly how you do it, and you can start this weekend. You take 1 part ordinary molasses, and you mix it with about 9 parts water, roughly a cup of molasses to 9 cups of water, in a plastic bucket or tub big enough for your rusty part. You drop the rusted piece right in, fully covered, and then you do the hardest thing of all. You walk away. You leave it for several days, a week for light rust, 2 or 3 weeks for a piece that is badly gone. You are not scrubbing. You are not straining. The molasses solution is slowly, patiently eating the rust off while you sleep. When you pull that piece out and rinse it and wipe it down, the rust comes away with it, and the bare, clean, sound metal is sitting right there underneath, unharmed. Bolts, brackets, tools, hinges, small steel parts off your car, old hardware you thought was ruined, all of it brought back from the dead with a syrup you can buy at any grocery store for a few dollars. And the moment that clean metal is dry, you do the very thing I already taught you. You wipe it with a thin coat of lanolin or linseed oil, and the rust can never come back. Think about the whole circle of it. 188, a farm ledger in pencil, a widow's chest that was about to be cleared out and thrown away. That recipe survived by the thinnest thread you can imagine, 1 folded piece of paper away from being lost forever. It was real. It worked. Somebody kept it alive without even knowing why it mattered. And now it is sitting in your hands. And you can do it this weekend with a bucket and a bottle of molasses. And you will watch rust dissolve off metal like a miracle that is really just old, patient, forgotten chemistry. That is the thing I need you to understand about all of it. None of this was magic. It was never magic. It was people who could not afford to waste, who could not run to a store, who could not throw a machine away because a fitting corroded, and so they learned the real nature of the materials in their world. They learned what dissolves rust and what stops it, what keeps ice off glass and what keeps leather alive, what the shiny, expensive can in the store is really made of underneath the label. And they were right. Every single time I doubted them, and I doubted them constantly, they turned out to be right, and I turned out to be the fool who had been paying full price for my own helplessness. I spent decades doing it the modern, expensive way. I traded in good trucks because I let them rot. I bought batteries I did not need. I bought de-icer by the armful and conditioner by the bottle, and I threw money at every problem instead of understanding it. And the men and women who could have saved me all of it were living 20 miles away in plain sight, driving buggies, keeping their steel sound for 50 years, and quietly running out of time to pass any of it on. So here is what I want you to feel right now, before you click away. You did not just watch a list of tricks. You caught something. You reached out and you grabbed a handful of knowledge that was sliding off the edge of the world, and now it is yours, and nobody can take it back out of your head. That is real. That matters more than any product I could ever point you at. You are the kind of person who refuses to let honest, proven, hard-won wisdom die out quietly on your watch, or you would have left 10 minutes ago. That is who this is for, not experts, not off-grid heroes, just people with enough sense left to know that the old way was often the better way, and enough backbone to actually use it. So, do this for me. Tell me in the comments which one you are going to try first. Is it the raw onion on the windshield tonight? Or is it the molasses bath for that rusty part you have been meaning to throw out? Pick one and write it down below, because I read them and because the next person scrolling by needs to know it is real. And tell me where in the world you are watching from, because I am always amazed how far this old knowledge travels. Do not just think it, type it. This audience stays quiet, and quiet is exactly how this wisdom disappeared in the first place. And if you believe, like I do, that these methods are worth saving before the last hands that remember them are gone, then come with me. Subscribe, not to support some channel, but to stand with the people who are pulling this knowledge back from the edge one video at a time. Because the next thing I am going to show you is how those same families keep food fresh for months without a working refrigerator, using nothing but a hole in the ground and one thing they always kept close. And once you see how it works, you will never look at your electric bill the same way again. Do not let it vanish. Come find it with me. If you're still with me, here's what comes next. Everything today was the overview. Inside my membership, the Plain Living Circle, I walk you through the whole season-long car preservation calendar. And there you can ask me your own question, and a real person, me, answers you myself. You won't be alone either. Folks like you are already inside. Just point your phone's camera at the code on screen. Cancel anytime. One click. No risk.